What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
I can understand that the situation, we all worry about what's happening in Gaza. So I can understand, and people, they can show their position in manifestation, demonstrations. These are allowed, these are legal, but they cannot have encampment on a university site.
Okay. Premier making it pretty clear today. Jim, first of all, he's saying, well, you just heard, it is illegal. McGill wants them off. Nothing has happened today other than the fact we had a lot more police show up. And as you heard Olivia say, that's because there were more protesters out there today. What do you think? First of all, what do you think of the Premier weighing in? We have heard nothing from Valerie Plante, by the way.
I think there's something vaguely disgusting hearing a provincial premier spout off about the rule of law and the importance of law and order and the importance of obeying the law. He says that in the morning, and then in the afternoon, he and his cronies go into the National Assembly and vote to make sure that for the next 5 years, observant Jews and Muslims still have no place in much of the Quebec civil service, and those who are in the civil service can look forward to seeing their careers go absolutely nowhere because they're observant Jews and Muslims. Francois Legault's political hypocrisy, and this seems to be a real streak in his character, Aaron. He thinks he's the smartest guy in every room. He thinks everyone else around him is an idiot, and he says these things out loud as if like nobody else knows how things work. When a Quebec premier, a provincial premier, turns around and says, implicitly says, the judge said, acknowledge that they're illegally, but they have the right to be there because, blah, 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 Charter of Rights. Charter of Rights, which of course in Quebec is a doormat for either provincial or federal, is a doormat for Francois Legault and his buddies, okay? And to lecture the Montreal cops. As I said, I'm pretty sure the chain of command is they don't work for him. He can, if he wants to declare a state of emergency, I guess, they could be dragooned into the service of the provincial government. But talk about a guy who was essentially just shoots his mouth off. It's like stream of consciousness garbage. And this is what we heard today. I'm just hoping he has enough sense, and given the fact that people were not at each other's throats, if nothing else, I was quite struck. And I will confess, I wasn't there. I just saw the video that was shot. I found the crowds to be a lot smaller than I thought they'd be. And I don't know if it's the weather or if it's just weather, or it's the public, the public perception of what's going on there. But quite frankly, I think another reason for that Francois Legault is quite frankly an embarrassment to this province. To hear him talk like that is clearly someone who's paid no attention to what is going on. I realize the only attention he's paid to McGill so far is to try and run into the ground by jacking up tuition fees for foreign students. But the fact of the matter is, this was a good example, a good opportunity for Francois Legault just to really shut up. He didn't take it. And I just hope that there's no fuel poured on the fire now. People say, well, no, the premier says that, the cops have to go in. The cops have to go in. The cops know what they're doing. The cops did a great job today, as far as I could tell. I hope they will keep it up tomorrow. And I think maybe the message from today is that there may be people out there who are hoping that both sides will be at each other's throats. It didn't happen, and perhaps they should be prepared to be disappointed in the future as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me leave the premier aside for 1 second, because my question when we get done here is going to be for our listeners. What do you think should happen next? So we know McGill, after the injunction was denied yesterday, Jim, McGill said, well, look, and we talked about this yesterday afternoon, but what happens going on? This is day 6. A couple of protests were out there today. I'm not so sure this is going to happen again tomorrow. What do you do here? What should happen next?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to actually sit down with, either put up or shut up. Either have your I guess security personnel, whatever, try and break up the camp because it's trespassing, or send a formal notice to the Montreal Police Department that you want to have it broken up, no questions asked. We want this done. We need it done yesterday. But the cops will turn around and say, well, listen, can you indicate to us whether there's a criminal act, whether there's a threat to public safety, and so on and so forth. As I said yesterday, if the camp is inconveniencing McGill, and it doesn't need to be inconveniencing operations. Not that there's that many classes going on right now, but if it's inconveniencing McGill, that's the idea behind the protest. And if people turn around and say, "Well, no, it shouldn't be. It looks terrible, and it should just be gone," just remember, whether it's in front of McGill or someplace else, if you want to protest something, if they make it that much more difficult for you, right now we're talking about what's happening in Gaza. What if people want to protest, I don't know, Bill 96? What if people want to protest Bill 21? And maybe some people think it goes too far. Should the cops be called in? Should Francois Legault be shooting his mouth off over whether or not people have a right to protest? We're on very, very dangerous ground here, Aaron, as far as I'm concerned. And for Francois Legault to have the confidence to turn around and say what he said today, as far as I'm concerned, bodes even worse than the usual threat to our freedoms here in Quebec. And what do I think should happen? I think everyone should calm the hell down. But right now, how long do you think maybe 100 people will be able to camp out there? There are other things they can do. They can cut off supplies, I guess, to the camp without having the cops move in. They can form a cordon around that. It is their property. They can control what's happening around it. But the idea of saying, okay, give up your, get out of the camp, make everything okay for us, and we'll sit down and talk to you about what you want. As I said yesterday, they tried to talk to them. They weren't being listened to. They claim that this is their response to that. And if it's making people uncomfortable, okay, I understand that. But as I say, just as a Montrealer and as a Quebecer and a Canadian, I'm just happy that nothing has happened. And as we just heard in your interview with the reporter, I thought it was a very germane answer that she gave you. It's like, tensions were never really that high. I think there's an expectation outside of that bubble for people to say, oh, well, this is it, man. There's going to be a showdown. It didn't happen. And maybe people will get bored later down the road, Aaron, and go away. But right now, I think the best thing McGill can do, given that it has not exactly covered itself in glory and how it's handled this thus far, is perhaps to take a deep breath and reach out to the organizers and say, listen, what is it going to take? Because, or at least get talks going. I know the organizers are saying, we are not going to go unless you do everything we say. That's the first step in negotiations. Ask for more than you expect. And that's where you start from. If they don't want to talk down the road, okay, fine. There might be another option there. But right now, the idea of suggesting that, oh my gosh, we got to send in the Marines because this is terrible. Every time I see a photo of that encampment, Aaron, I know it's shot from a drone. But man, it doesn't look that big. It doesn't look that threatening. And quite frankly, it looks a little sad out there in the mud. But that's just me.
All right, we will leave it there. I want to get you to weigh in really quickly. My question was going to be, given what's going on in Quebec Solidaire right now, is the biggest threat to Quebec Solidaire Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois?
On the contrary, I think he's the only thing that's going to keep it alive, because right now, he with a certain amount of frankness that's long overdue in Quebec Solidaire, he said, we have a choice. We can be professional agitators and be perpetually in opposition, okay, and have these internal fights that embarrass us, or we can turn around and tell Quebecers, listen, we want to govern Quebec, and this is why you should vote for us. That's what he did yesterday. It's so funny because the PQ got a little nervous today. Pascal Bérubé said, oh, they're compromising their principles, as if the PQ's never done that. But yeah, they've got to decide to fish or cut bait, because what we don't need is another perpetual opposition party. The Liberals seem to have the inside track on that at the moment.
James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Demain.